Everyone in the neighborhood loved Sarah's flower shop. Same location for 15 years. Beautiful arrangements, fresh flowers. But that day when police detective came to buy flowers, a strange smell from the back garden caught his attention. What he saw behind the greenhouse would completely change his life. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If you enjoyed this story about those who serve in silence, please consider subscribing for more tales of unsung heroes. The Rose Garden Florist occupied a charming Victorian storefront on Maple Street in the historic district of Salem, Oregon. Its hand-painted wooden sign and window boxes filled with seasonal blooms, creating an inviting atmosphere that had attracted customers for over 15 years. The shop's reputation for exceptional floral arrangements, competitive prices, and personalized service had made it a beloved fixture in the close-knit community, where neighbors knew each other by name and local businesses thrived on personal relationships built over decades of faithful service. The proprietor of the Rose Garden Florist was Sarah Chen, a soft-spoken woman in her early 40s who had moved to Salem from the Pacific Northwest and established her business shortly after arriving in the area, with little fanfare but impressive botanical knowledge that quickly earned her a reputation for creating stunning arrangements that lasted longer and looked more beautiful than anything available from competitors in the region. To her regular customers and fellow business owners on Maple Street, Sarah appeared to be exactly what her profession suggested, a dedicated florist with exceptional knowledge of plants, flowers, and horticultural techniques that enabled her to create stunning arrangements for weddings, funerals, and special occasions, while maintaining the kind of consistent quality that kept customers returning year after year for all their floral needs. Sarah's approach to floral design was sophisticated and scientific in ways that distinguished her from many florists in small-town Oregon. While other flower shop owners might rely on traditional arrangements and common varieties purchased from wholesale distributors, Sarah demonstrated comprehensive knowledge of plant biology, soil chemistry, botanical relationships, seasonal growing patterns, and advanced preservation techniques that suggested education and training that went far beyond standard horticultural programs offered at community colleges or trade schools. Her flower shop occupied the ground floor of the Victorian building, while Sarah lived in the apartment upstairs and maintained extensive greenhouse facilities and growing areas in the large lot behind the building that stretched back nearly an acre and included multiple climate-controlled structures, specialized growing mediums, sophisticated irrigation systems, and research areas that suggested serious botanical work rather than routine flower production for retail sales. The greenhouse complex was more elaborate than most commercial flower operations would require, featuring multiple climate-controlled environments with precise temperature and humidity controls, specialized lighting systems that could simulate various geographical conditions, hydroponic growing systems for plants that required specific nutritional profiles, and security measures that seemed excessive for protecting flowers and plants from theft or vandalism. What none of Sarah's customers, neighbors, or fellow business owners knew was that her flower shop was not just a retail business, but rather a carefully constructed cover identity that concealed her true profession and the real purpose of her botanical operations. The extensive greenhouse facilities and specialized growing areas behind her shop were not designed primarily for producing flowers for arrangements, but for cultivating plant specimens that served entirely different purposes related to criminal investigation and forensic science. Sarah Chen was not simply a florist with advanced horticultural knowledge. She was Dr. Sarah Chen, a forensic botanist with a doctorate in plant biology from Stanford University and 15 years of experience providing expert testimony in criminal cases where botanical evidence played crucial roles in determining guilt or innocence, cause of death, time and location of criminal activities, and other forensic questions that required specialized scientific knowledge that few investigators possessed. Her academic background included specialized research in plant toxicology, pollen analysis, plant pathology, botanical genetics, and the forensic applications of botanical science that had made her one of the most sought-after expert witnesses in criminal cases involving plant-related evidence throughout the western United States, and occasionally in federal cases that required her unique expertise and scientific credentials. Sarah's expertise encompassed everything from identifying poison plants used in homicides and analyzing their effects on human physiology, to examining pollen samples that could place suspects at specific crime scenes during particular seasons, to studying plant materials found on clothing or vehicles that could establish connections between suspects and crime locations that would otherwise be impossible to prove through conventional forensic methods. The decision to establish her forensic botany practice under the cover of a flower shop had been both practical and strategic, developed over several years of consideration about how to maintain her scientific work while ensuring the privacy and security that her consulting activities required. The legitimate flower business provided explanation for her extensive plant cultivation activities, while the small-town location offered privacy and discretion for research projects that often involved sensitive criminal investigations and confidential law enforcement activities that required absolute secrecy. For 15 years, Sarah had successfully maintained her dual identity, operating a profitable flower shop that served local customers and provided her with a comfortable income while conducting forensic botanical research that supported criminal investigations throughout the Pacific Northwest and beyond, sometimes traveling to testify in high-profile cases that attracted national media attention while maintaining her cover identity as a small-town florist. Her greenhouse facilities enabled her to cultivate specimens needed for experimental research, maintain reference collections of plants from around the world that might be encountered in criminal cases, and conduct controlled experiments that helped her understand how various botanical materials behaved under different conditions that might be relevant to forensic applications. The flower shop provided the perfect cover for receiving unusual plant materials without attracting suspicion, as customers and delivery services assumed that exotic plants and specialized growing supplies were simply part of her florist business rather than materials needed for criminal investigation support. Sarah's forensic work included analysis of plant evidence in homicide cases where victims had been poisoned with plant materials, identification of botanical substances found at crime scenes that could establish timelines or locations, expert testimony explaining how plant evidence supported or contradicted suspect alibis, and consultation on cases where traditional forensic techniques were insufficient to establish guilt or determine the circumstances of criminal activities. Her specialized knowledge had proven crucial in cases where conventional forensic methods had reached dead ends, providing new avenues for investigation and evidence that had helped convict murderers, drug dealers, environmental criminals, and other offenders who thought they had destroyed all evidence of their activities or believed that plant materials could not be traced back to specific locations or time periods. The case that would ultimately expose Sarah's true identity began on a sunny Tuesday afternoon in late spring when Detective Mike Harrison, a 20-year veteran of the Salem Police Department with an exemplary record of solved cases and community respect, decided to surprise his wife on their wedding anniversary by purchasing flowers from the Rose Garden Florist, which had a reputation for creating exceptional arrangements that demonstrated thoughtfulness and attention to detail. Detective Harrison had been a regular customer at the Rose Garden Florist for several years, purchasing arrangements for various occasions, including his wife's birthday, their anniversary, Valentine's Day, and other special events, always impressed by Sarah's ability to create beautiful arrangements that seemed to perfectly capture the sentiment he wanted to express while staying within his budget as a police officer with modest income. His relationship with Sarah had been purely commercial and cordial, with no connection to any criminal investigation or police business, and no reason for him to suspect that the friendly florist who created such beautiful arrangements might have any connection to law enforcement activities or criminal justice work beyond the occasional purchase of flowers for police department events or officer retirement parties. Detective Harrison's visit to the flower shop on this particular afternoon was motivated purely by personal reasons, with no connection to any ongoing investigation or police business. He was looking for roses and baby's breath for an anniversary arrangement, trusting Sarah's expertise and artistic ability to create something special that would demonstrate his thoughtfulness and attention to his wife's preferences while conveying the depth of his feelings after 20 years of marriage. As Sarah prepared Detective Harrison's arrangement, selecting the freshest roses from her inventory and adding complementary flowers and greenery to create a balanced and beautiful composition, she stepped into the back area of the shop to access her growing facilities and select additional materials that would enhance the arrangement's visual appeal and longevity. Detective Harrison waited patiently in the shop, casually looking at the various plants and arrangements displayed throughout the retail space while Sarah worked, appreciating the obvious care and expertise that went into maintaining such a beautiful and well-organized business that served the community with consistent quality and reasonable prices that made beautiful flowers accessible to working families. The afternoon was particularly warm for late spring, and Sarah had opened the back door to the greenhouse area to provide ventilation and air circulation between the shop and the growing facilities, allowing the natural breeze to help maintain comfortable temperatures throughout the building while reducing the need for expensive air conditioning that would increase her operating costs. It was during this casual wait that Detective Harrison noticed an unusual smell drifting from the back garden area, carried on the breeze through the open door. The scent was distinctive and slightly unpleasant, different from the typical floral fragrances that normally emanated from the shop, and unlike anything he would have expected from a flower business that specialized in fresh, beautiful arrangements for special occasions. His years of police experience had trained him to notice unusual odors that might indicate illegal activities, chemical processes, decomposition, or other situations that could be relevant to criminal investigations. And this particular smell triggered his professional instincts in ways that made him more alert and observant about his surroundings and what might be causing such an unexpected odor. The smell was not immediately identifiable, but it had characteristics that reminded Detective Harrison of odors he had encountered at crime scenes involving decomposition, chemical processes, biological materials, or laboratory environments where scientific work was being conducted under conditions that might produce unusual scents that would not be present in normal commercial operations. His curiosity aroused and his professional instincts engaged. Detective Harrison moved closer to the back door and asked Sarah if he could see her greenhouse facilities, explaining that he was interested in understanding how she maintained such high-quality flowers year-round and whether she grew her own plants or purchased them from wholesale suppliers like most flower shops in the area. Sarah initially hesitated when Detective Harrison requested to see her greenhouse facilities, explaining that the growing areas were not really set up for visitors and that she preferred to keep her cultivation operations private because they represented proprietary methods and techniques that gave her competitive advantages over other florists in the region. However, Detective Harrison's genuine interest in her horticultural methods, his status as a longtime customer who had always been courteous and supportive of her business, and his position as a respected member of the community made it difficult for her to refuse his request without seeming unreasonably secretive or suspicious in ways that might damage their business relationship or create unwanted attention. After a moment of consideration, Sarah agreed to show Detective Harrison the greenhouse facilities, leading him through the back door into the climate-controlled growing areas, where she maintained various plant species under carefully regulated conditions designed to optimize growth, health, and productivity for both her flower shop operations and her more specialized research activities. The greenhouse complex was indeed impressive, featuring multiple growing environments with different temperature, humidity, lighting, and ventilation conditions designed to accommodate plants with varying requirements from different climatic zones and growing seasons, allowing Sarah to maintain year-round availability of flowers and plant materials that would normally be seasonal or geographically restricted. As they walked through the greenhouse, Detective Harrison's trained eye and professional experience began to notice features that seemed unusual or excessive for a commercial flower operation serving a small town market. The level of security was higher than expected, with locked sections, restricted access areas, surveillance cameras, and alarm systems that seemed designed to protect materials more valuable or sensitive than flowers and plants. The variety of plants was broader and more exotic than necessary for floral arrangements, including species that had no obvious commercial application for a flower shop serving typical customer needs for weddings, funerals, birthdays, and anniversary celebrations, and many specimens that appeared to be grown for research purposes rather than aesthetic or commercial value. Most significantly, Detective Harrison noticed that some of the growing areas contained plants that he recognized from his police training and experience as being associated with criminal activities, including specimens that appeared to be toxic varieties that had been used in poisonings he had investigated, plants that produced substances with psychoactive properties, and botanical materials that he had encountered in evidence rooms during various criminal cases throughout his career. The distinctive smell that had initially caught his attention became stronger in certain areas of the greenhouse, and Detective Harrison realized that some of the odors were coming from decomposing plant materials that were being studied under controlled conditions, scientific equipment that was processing botanical samples, and research activities that resembled laboratory work more than commercial flower production. The setup resembled a scientific research facility more than a commercial growing operation, with laboratory equipment, microscopes, chemical analysis tools, specimen storage systems, and documentation methods that suggested serious scientific work rather than routine flower cultivation for retail sales to local customers. Sarah noticed Detective Harrison's increasing attention to the unusual aspects of her greenhouse operation and realized that his law enforcement background and professional training were enabling him to recognize features and patterns that ordinary customers would overlook or dismiss as simply part of an unusually sophisticated flower business operated by someone with advanced horticultural education. His questions about specific plants, growing methods, security measures, and laboratory equipment indicated knowledge and suspicion that went beyond casual interest in horticulture, and Sarah began to understand that her carefully maintained cover identity might be in jeopardy if Detective Harrison's professional instincts led him to investigate further or discuss his observations with other law enforcement personnel. The moment of revelation came when Detective Harrison stopped in front of a locked growing area that contained specimens of plants he recognized from a recent homicide investigation where botanical evidence had been crucial to establishing the method and timing of the crime. The case had involved a suspected poisoning where plant toxins had been used to murder the victim, and he had worked closely with forensic experts to identify plant materials found at the crime scene and in the victim's system. Looking at the plants and then at Sarah with new understanding and professional recognition, Detective Harrison asked directly, "Dr. Chen, are you the forensic botanist who provided the expert testimony in the Morrison poisoning case?" The recognition in Detective Harrison's voice and his use of her academic title made it clear that her cover identity had been compromised and that his law enforcement experience had enabled him to piece together the evidence of her true profession from the clues present in her greenhouse facilities, her scientific equipment, and the unusual plant specimens she was cultivating for forensic research purposes. After a moment of consideration about how to respond and whether to continue maintaining her cover identity, Sarah nodded and confirmed Detective Harrison's assessment, explaining that she had indeed been working as a forensic botanist while maintaining her flower shop as both a legitimate business and a cover for her specialized research activities that supported criminal investigations throughout the region. Detective Harrison's reaction was one of amazement, professional respect, and appreciation, rather than suspicion or concern about any potential wrongdoing, as he had worked on several cases where botanical evidence had been crucial to achieving justice, and he understood the value of Sarah's expertise for criminal investigations and the challenges of maintaining such specialized scientific capabilities in a small community. His recognition of her work represented professional appreciation for her contributions to criminal justice rather than any indication of legal problems or concerns about the legitimacy of her activities, and he expressed admiration for her ability to maintain such an effective cover identity while providing crucial support to law enforcement agencies throughout the Pacific Northwest. The revelation of Sarah's true identity created an immediate opportunity for professional collaboration between a respected detective with decades of experience and a forensic scientist with capabilities that could significantly enhance the Salem Police Department's investigative effectiveness in cases involving plant-related evidence, environmental crimes, and complex forensic questions that required specialized scientific expertise. Detective Harrison explained that the Salem Police Department had several ongoing cases that could benefit from forensic botanical analysis, including a suspicious death that might involve plant toxins, an environmental crime case where plant evidence could establish timelines and locations, and a drug case where botanical analysis might help identify cultivation methods and sources of illegal substances. Sarah's willingness to provide forensic assistance to local law enforcement marked the beginning of a partnership that would enhance the Salem Police Department's investigative capabilities while allowing her to contribute her expertise to criminal justice in her adopted community, where she had built a successful business and established personal relationships that made her want to support local law enforcement efforts to maintain community safety and security. Her unique combination of advanced botanical knowledge, practical investigative experience, and established research facilities made her invaluable for cases that other forensic specialists could not handle effectively, providing the Salem Police Department with capabilities that were typically available only to major metropolitan areas with larger budgets and more extensive forensic resources. The flower shop that had served as Sarah's cover identity continued to operate as a legitimate business, serving community needs for beautiful floral arrangements. But her role as a forensic botanist became an acknowledged part of her professional identity within law enforcement circles throughout Oregon and neighboring states, enhancing her ability to contribute to criminal justice while maintaining the privacy and security that her sensitive work required. Her greenhouse facilities were recognized as valuable resources for criminal investigations, while her flower shop provided comfortable and discreet meeting places for law enforcement consultations and evidence analysis that would not attract attention or compromise ongoing investigations that required absolute confidentiality and operational security. Detective Harrison's discovery of Sarah's true profession led to successful resolution of several criminal cases where botanical evidence had previously been overlooked or misinterpreted by investigators who lacked the specialized knowledge needed to recognize the significance of plant materials found at crime scenes or in connection with suspected criminal activities. Her ability to analyze plant materials, identify toxic substances, determine geographic origins of botanical specimens, establish timelines based on plant growth patterns and seasonal characteristics, and provide expert testimony that juries could understand proved crucial for prosecuting criminals who had attempted to use plants and botanical knowledge to commit crimes while avoiding detection by law enforcement agencies. Sarah's story became an example of how academic expertise and specialized knowledge could be applied to practical law enforcement needs in ways that benefited entire communities, demonstrating that scientists and researchers could contribute to criminal justice and public safety while maintaining successful civilian careers that served community needs in multiple ways. The greenhouse behind the Rose Garden Florist became known within forensic circles as one of the most comprehensive botanical research facilities in the Pacific Northwest, capable of growing and analyzing plant specimens from around the world for use in criminal cases while maintaining the cover and security that sensitive forensic work required to avoid compromising ongoing investigations. Dr. Sarah Chen had proven that scientific expertise could be effectively hidden behind ordinary business operations, ready to serve justice when criminal investigations required specialized knowledge that few people possessed, while contributing to community life through beautiful floral arrangements that brought joy to countless celebrations and provided comfort during times of loss and grief.